While Marvel continues to kill the TV world with its most different and daring show yet. Hey guys, it's Keller for the series premiere of the new FX show Legion. This is Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 1, and guys, I was so hyped for this show. As you guys know, this was my most anticipated, not just new show, but show in general, for the winter TV season. I could not wait for the show. Just after all the hype and all the build-up we've heard about it, I was really hoping this would turn out to be as good as it could possibly be, and I really didn't have too many worries. I mean, there was so much that was making me excited, between Noah Hawley being the one to write the show, one of the best, I think, TV writers, TV geniuses out there, really. I mean, he is incredible. Also being a Marvel show and not being canned to the X-Men universe, this really just had all the ingredients to be a great show, and thank God that it was. Guys, I loved this pilot. I thought this was such an incredible start that honestly goes against everything you should do in a premiere, really. I mean, I don't know what half of this episode means, I'm not gonna lie, but that doesn't matter. I was so hooked with this show. I loved where they went. It was different, it was psychological, it was so mind-numbing and so mind-boggling as to what actually is going on, and it just completely hooked me in. I loved everything about this first episode, but let's just get into it because there is definitely a lot to talk about. Even though I didn't understand a lot of it, I don't think many people did, but let's just get into it, and that's not a complaint for me that I didn't understand it. I like that I didn't understand this. I liked that it was confusing. I don't want it to be something where I know everything that's going on because there's no mystery, there's no suspense. This perfectly hooked us in, but let's just get into it. So we start off and we meet our main character, David Haller. He is a mentally unstable young man, and we know that immediately because in a montage, we see him seeing a chemistry lab on fire, getting into a fight at prom, arrested during a riot, and the final straws we discover through, of course, the pilot is an argument that ends with the kitchen exploding around him, and David basically trying to hang himself. So things are obviously very bad for him, and when we first meet him, he's a patient at Clockwork Psychiatric Hospital. He's been diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and that's basically the thing that's going to drive the show forward. Is he actually crazy? Is he seeing these visions, or is there a reason why it's happening? And while that may or may not be true, he definitely has extreme telekinetic powers that he really does not understand yet. He doesn't really know what they're all about, and the time period is quite uncertain as to where we are, really what exactly is going on, where we are, but the costumes look like 1960s, and David at one point used a payphone. One of the characters referenced CNN, which didn't exist until 1980, and also institutionalized with David is a girl named Lenny, and a girl named Sydney, and David's talking with Sydney, who agrees to be his girlfriend on one condition, that he never ever touches her. Just immediately, he asks her, can you be my girlfriend? She says yes, and I didn't know it was that easy, but alright, and basically says if he never ever touches her, then that she will be his girlfriend, which is obviously very hard to do, when you're dating someone, but I did think already we were off to a great start. I was immediately hooked in. This was such a great way to get us into the premiere, and it really does stay just as good from there. So Sydney suggests that one day during group therapy that David is there because someone said he was quote-unquote not normal, and we don't know what that exactly means, but she asks what if the problems aren't in his head in addition to voices, and David has horrible dreams that frequently include the devil with the yellow eyes, and we don't know what this is. It's this, short, fat creature that, kind of like a potato-shaped. I mean, we don't really know what that's all about, but, we then time jump to now, where David is speaking with someone who he's told is a police detective, but he obviously isn't. This is not really a police detective. This is someone else who's clearly trying to get information on him. I'm going to assume he's a reporter, just from the way this one, I think he's a reporter, and he's questioning David about an incident that took place in a hospital when David was a patient for 6 years before escaping, and the nameless cop claims that there is no record of a Sydney Barrett at the hospital. Now, we just saw that David was talking to said girl, but, he's saying that she's not actually there. So he wonders if she is all part of his delusion, if she's actually a ghost or not, if she actually is real, and David is adamant that she is real. He can't possibly believe that this girl isn't real. His brain is a little fuzzy right now, and he has been off his meds for a while, and the interrogator agrees to a break. We discover that the interrogation room is actually a set inside of a drained gymnasium swimming pool, which, again, very weird, but in the gym proper, government soldiers are arming themselves, and an older man is watching the interrogation on a sophisticated video system, and the observer wants to know if he's crazy, and the interrogator thinks that David is telling the truth. He knows he's crazy, but part of him knows the power is real. So we don't know what that really means, and while the scope of David's powers is unknown, the interrogator believes that he may be the most powerful mutant that they've ever seen. Remember, this does kind of take place in the X-Men universe, kind of doesn't, but he is essentially an X-Men, and he is a mutant. And the observer says that Division 1 thinks that they should kill David, and the interrogator wants until the end of the day. That he really wants to get as much information as he can on him. He's not really a cop. It's clear there's more going on than we think, and I think definitely that was very interesting to see. So the interrogator returns to David with a machine wanting to read his brain while they talk, and David is tired of this. He really does not want to talk to me. He wants a lawyer. He's very much not wanting to talk about it because he just doesn't want anyone to know, and the interrogator just wants him to remain calm. David realizes that he holds the power when he figures out that they are afraid of him. He agrees to have electrodes placed on his head and continues to tell him about the incident at the hospital. So we then cut back to the hospital, and Sydney, we see, is being released, and she's sad because David isn't there to say goodbye, and as she's leaving, David rushes to say goodbye. She's relieved to see him until he leans in and kisses her. Now, this obviously does kind of scare her off, because what was the one thing she said is that he should not come in contact with her, is that he should leave her alone. So, when he's doing this, by kissing her and everything, it does kind of scare her off by him doing that. She really did not expect him to react in that certain way, and it does kind of scare her off a bit, we see. So there's a spark, and he then sees a field filled with televisions, and both are knocked backwards. So we don't exactly know what this means, and he's dragged away screaming while Sydney's taking the infirmary, because this was really the first girl that he had a connection with. You get the sense that this is someone that he really bonded with, that he actually really did want to settle down with, and now he's realizing that he can't see her, and that he's all by himself, and the entire hospital's in a lockdown while Sydney calmly holds an ice pack to her head. Her doctor rushes to help the staff with David, who at this point is just going insane. I mean, he's screaming, he's, throwing things, he's on the verge of insanity, and left alone, Sydney's shocked by what she sees. It is David in Sydney's body, which means it is Sydney in David's body with David's powers of telekinesis, and she's freaking out, causing David's powers to go haywire. So now we're starting to get the sense of why she didn't really want to touch her, because maybe she might not even be real. I mean, we definitely get that sense that could very possibly be true, that Sydney might not actually be there, which is crazy to think about. But again, they did such a great job with setting up this idea of her maybe not even being alive, that she might not actually be there, that he might just be imagining this entire thing. Again, crazy to think about, but it honestly does make sense when you think about a lot of what's been going on. It does it's not crazy to, possibly think of that scenario happening. I could definitely see it going in that direction where maybe she's not real. We honestly don't really know if he's real. I thought it was definitely interesting the way they set that up here, where she might not actually be real. But the doctor walks down the hall and enters the common room, which is awash in a red light, and the room is completely empty, devoid of humans and furniture, and Sydney follows the doctor down the hall, followed panic screams. The hallway is devoid of doors, and the room numbers are still on the wall, but the doors are gone, replaced by solid drywall. The screams are coming from people who are now trapped in their rooms. One person isn't screaming. That's Lenny. Why? Because she's dead, we find out. She's actually not real. She's dead, and she was trapped halfway in her room when the walls sealed up, and David is also sealed up in his room, screaming his own name. Now, we know obviously David's not dead, but that definitely does open a few possibilities as to what could actually be going on there, because there is kind of a possibility he could be dead. We know he attempted suicide, so kind of maybe he's not. I honestly don't know. Again, there's a lot of stuff here that's very unclear, and I like that's unclear. I'm not upset that it's unclear. I like that it is unclear, because again, we don't really know what's going on and what's actually this show is really about. It's still very, even to this scene, we still are very unsure as to what's actually going on. They do such a great job with making us confused and setting this up, getting us as into this world as possible. I know they did an incredible job with that throughout this entire episode. So then we get another weird scene where the doctors hurry Sydney out of the hospital, telling her that she may not get another chance to leave, and she's insisting her name isn't actually Sydney, like this isn't really her, but she's distracted when a sleek car pulls up, and a Natalie-dressed couple gets out, and the third person gets out of the car and doesn't turn around. And again, we don't know what that's about, but Flipping back to the now narrative, David accused the interrogator of being at the hospital and that he's been watching him this entire time, and the interrogator insists that David's wrong, tries to change the subject, but David's very adamant, and the room trembles, and the interrogator's pen impales itself in his cheek, and that was crazy to see that he actually impaled himself, and in the observation area, the older man orders his men to use gas, and everyone mobilizes. David's powers and throw everyone in the room back against the wall, turns the desk into dust, and he looks pretty satisfied with himself. Like, he actually is very happy that this turned out as well as it did, but the gas then knocks him out, and his story continues in his dream. Sydney is sitting in a cafe, remembering David's memories. Then it is David sitting there physically and mentally. He feels his chest and realizes he's back to himself. And armed with Sydney's suitcase, David goes to his sister Amy's house, and she's stunned to see him. You get the sense these two haven't seen each other in a very, very long time, and she welcomes him, sets him up to stay in the converted basement, and Lenny visits David, promising that she's not mad, that she actually is legit, and she knew that it was a passenger riding in his body, and acknowledges that she didn't have much to expect from life, and she warns him that they are coming, they're going to kill him, and again, we don't know who they are, but obviously it's not a good thing. So this very much upsets David. The lamp is flying across the room, bringing Amy down to check on him. He assures her that he's fine, but even still, she takes all of her husband's gardening tools, and we don't know what that's really about, but to her, you get the sense that she is terrified of her brother. I mean, she definitely knows that, at least to her, she thinks he's insane. She thinks that he has problems, which everyone pretty much thinks that David's insane, except for us. You know, we've seen very clearly that David is not insane. He very much does have sort of an idea of what's going on. It's because of his powers that makes him so different from everyone else, and kind of it makes everyone avoid him. Like, no one really wants to get close to David because of his powers, and that's something, again, they did an incredibly well, good job setting up here. So then we get by far the strangest scene in this episode, where David sleeps. He dreams he and Sydney are doing a Bollywood dance number in the hospital. I have no idea what any of this meant. I don't know why he's thinking of them doing a Bollywood dance number, but again, we don't really know what that's about. I thought that was definitely interesting to see, but it was cool to see this scene of Amy and him going back to his sister's house, but we quickly realize that this isn't actually real. Like, he's just kind of dreaming that this is happening, or at least we don't know what's actually going on, because he wakes up, basically, but again, they did a really great job of, again, really getting us into this world, really getting us just as confused with what's going on with David, and I really do love the way they did that here. So David then wakes up in the current narrative with the interrogator, but he has been moved. He now sits in a tall metal chair in the middle of a swimming pool, and it's now filled with water, and the interrogator stands nearby holding onto a switch, and he tells him to not pretend. If he tries anything, he's going to get a million volts, not even 1,000, a million. So David laughs him, insisting that this is all his delusion, that he's not actually there. David doesn't think that he's actually being interrogated, and the interrogator says that they came to the hospital and took Sydney thinking that she was David, and he says that they want her too, threatens to electrocute David if he doesn't tell him where Sydney is, and David says he doesn't know. He went looking for her, but she was gone, and we see that's actually true. In another flashback, David calls the hospital from a payphone. He finds that they have no record of Sydney anywhere, so again, he doesn't know if she was actually there. So the two people who arrived at the hospital came towards him. He takes off, they follow him. Sydney appears and says she's not really there. This is his memory. They can't track them here, and she explains that he is in government facility, and the men speaking to him are not cops, basically. They're not actually cops, and we've seen that very clearly. They're definitely not cops that are talking to him, but she instructs him to slide out of his chair into the water and stay there until he sees her. So again, we don't know what that's all about. But now he's kind of getting the sense that she's not actually there, and that, again, he's kind of just going crazy. So David then is back in the now. The interrogator starts drilling him on who the third person was at the hospital that day, and David realized that it wasn't the interrogator, but a woman, we find out. The interrogator was not actually the one there. Everyone's starting to get antsy as the interrogator asks once again where the girl is, and he says that he's about to find out, slips from his chair into the water. The guards start firing. There's this huge explosion, and we get this incredibly epic end where David remains submerged. Even as charred corpses float by, he surfaces, and even though it seems that, you know, he even though this explosion happened, David is completely fine. He doesn't have a scratch or anything on him. He services and finds Sydney, flanked by the two people from the hospital. She helps him out of the water, reminds him not to touch her skin because she's wearing gloves, then introduces him to her companions, Carrie and Potomi. I'm guessing these are going to be characters we learn more about later, but the quartet run outside through a hole in the wall where they discover a war zone. They dodge missiles and guns, and a mission leader, complete with powers, leads them down a hill to the rendezvous spot. David then stops Sydney, begs to know, is this real? She assures him that it is real, and she is real, and she loves him. And she introduces David to Melanie Bird, who's actually the third person to get out of the car at the hospital, we find out, and she extends a hand to greet him. David looks at it warily, and behind him he sees a potato man with yellow eyes. He shakes the vision from his head, takes Melanie's hand, realizing that this is his destiny, this is something he needs to do, and that essentially jump-starts the plot of the show, and that is the way this episode ends. Really incredible stuff overall. Let's just get into this episode and what I really do love about the show so far. So overall, guys, for this show being so mysterious, I really did love this pilot, but let's just get into how great things are and how great the show really is, starting off with the cast. And that was the thing that really did hook me in the show. The cast really is so great here. I don't think there's a single bad person in this cast. Now, mind you, we didn't see every single character. Like, we still didn't see every single character in the show, but I really did love what I saw of most of these characters. Let's first talk about our main lead here. Dan Stevens as David Haller is absolute perfection as this character. I mean, I've seen Dan Stevens before, and he's really great, but I really did love him in this role because, you know, to someone who's not in the UK, he's virtually unknown to Americans. I mean, he's doing a lot of stuff this year, definitely, like Beauty and the Beast, and, you know, he just did Fantastic Beasts as well, but now he is Legion, and I think this is definitely going to be his big role. Like, this is the role that's going to get him, to do, you know, what he's really wanting to do. You know, he's really going to become, I think, a big name out there, you know, in the Hollywood world. I think that definitely is going to happen, and he was absolutely incredible in the show because he really does transform himself into this character, and they do everything you can to really get you to understand David. This is clearly a man who's not crazy. Everyone seems to think that he's crazy, but he really is not crazy. It's just that his mind really affects him in many crazy ways. I mean, there's so many visions and things that he has on this show. It's a very psychedelic show in that way, and I think they did an incredible job with getting you into his psyche and really trying to make you think, you know, what's real, what's not. There's a lot more going on with David than we think. I mean, clearly he does have these telekinesis powers and this telepathy, but I think in David's mind, he doesn't really know if it's real. Like, you get the sense that he doesn't know what's actually real. You know, is Sydney real? Are the powers real? What actually is real? You know, we can tell that definitely what's actually going on, but we don't really know. But we also get the sense that David was, in fact, you know, he wasn't always crazy. Like, he definitely did have somewhat of a good childhood, and I think they did a very good job with setting that up, you know, showing constantly kind of flashbacks of him and his mother, the relation that they had. Just everything about this character was so well done. It's one of the best setups to a main character I've seen in such a long time. How intimate they really were with this. I thought Dan Stevens did an incredible job getting us into the emotional antithesis of David Haller. I already care so much about his character. I can't wait to see where he's going to go, and it immediately got me on board with how great this show and this character really is. And if he wasn't as good, I don't think the show would nearly be as good. However, the rest of the show is just as great. I think everyone else really did a great job. Let's talk about Rachel Keller as Sydney Barrett, because this is a very interesting character. We don't really know what's going on with her. All we really know is that this is someone who truly does love David. I think she definitely does have the feelings for David. I think that definitely is sincere. But for some reason, she doesn't, you know, want skin-to-skin contact, because it seems to me that she trades places with you, essentially. Like, if you touch her, she turns into you, and she basically, you know, has to do what you do, which is very interesting to think about, and I think it definitely is a very, very different kind of character. I really do love where we're going with Sydney, but what also is going on with her? It's clear she's part of some sort of secret organization. There's also a possibility that she's not actually real. Does David really have the connection that he thinks he has with her, or is it actually, you know, just his imagination? relation. We don't really know, but I can't wait to see where they're going to go. Their chemistry in this episode was so strong. You genuinely believe that these two loved each other, and that these two had this relationship, and that she really did want to be with him. But we still don't know a lot about her. Like, we just know that she was part of, she was in this relationship with David, and they have this connection together. And I love the way that they set that up with her character. They did an incredible job of showing where this is going to go. I can't wait to see where she's going to go in the show. Her character, again, is so different. She very much fascinates me, and I think she's just as interesting as David, honestly, but I can't wait to see really where she's going to go. She did an incredible job here, and I can't wait to see where she's going to go throughout the show. However, let's talk about the one role that was very interesting in the show, and that is Aubrey Plaza as Lenny, because everyone knows that Aubrey Plaza has been a very up and down actor. She's had some really great stuff, and then she's done some really shitty stuff. And I can go on all day where we know what stuff she's done that's good, what stuff she's done that's bad. But this is the kind of role that Aubrey Plaza needs to be doing. This is unlike any other role she's done before. It's very psychedelic, it's very confusing, and we don't know, really, it's very cerebral in that sense. We don't know exactly if we know what's actually going on with their character. First of all, why is she dead? We clearly know that she's dead and that she is definitely a vision through David. I mean, no one else can see her, no one else contacts with her. It's only David who seems to notice her. But why is that exactly? Like, why did she go to David? Why was this, why was this her destiny? What really is going on with that? And why is David the person that she's interacting with? We don't really know what's going on. That's something else that we don't really know about, is what's really going on between her and David. Why is he seeing her? Also, what was her character like? I mean, we definitely get the sense as a character that she's very optimistic, and she doesn't really seem to care much about consequences. Like, nothing really phases her in that sense when it comes to consequences. But what exactly did happen to her? Why is she here? How'd she die? All that kind of stuff just really interests me. She's not cynical, though. That's something I actually did like about her character, that she's not a cynical character. Most of Aubrey Plaza's roles are very cynical. She's very mean-spirited. This is the complete opposite. She's completely optimistic. She's full of so much confidence, to the point where it really seems like nothing really phases her. And I think it's so interesting where they're going with her character. I can't wait to see where her character ends up going. She by far is the most blank slate out of everyone, but I can't wait to see where they're going to go with her. And again, I am incredibly fascinated by what's really going on there, because again, we don't really know. And then the rest of the characters in the show, I can't really talk about. I mean, Katie Aselton, when we saw, she was good as Amy Haller. I liked her character overall. I thought Jean Smart, it was actually a very wise decision to not have Jean Smart in this episode. Like, she was only at the very end, and I think it was definitely kind of interesting that they did that. They did something similar to that with Fargo Season 2, and it's very brave the way that Noah Hawley does it. When you have someone like Jean Smart, who's such a talented actress, who's known for so many great performances, but you don't put her until the end, it's very wise the way he did that, and I really did love that. But the cast really here is fantastic. I can't wait to see where this cast is going to go. It's by far the most impressive cast I have seen of any show so far this year, and I absolutely love that. But now we need to get to the stuff that really does make the show as great as it is, and that is the genius that is Noah Hawley, because holy shit. I mean, this is Noah Hawley's vision in every way possible. And he said it straight out. This is not like any Marvel show you've seen. And most times it'd be like, oh, that sounds very pretentious, or that just sounds like, he's just trying to make it sound better than it is. But no, he truly is right. This is unlike anything I've ever seen before. I mean, his directing here is so different, and it's so weird, and it's really incredibly well done. It's very much like a David Lynch film, but you definitely did get some fragments of Terrence Malick in there, even a little bit, I'd say, of Fincher. There was even some Fincher in there. He really did an incredible job with the directing here. It was funny at points, it was very insightful, and the story in general was so compelling. I was so on board with the story, and there are so many things that I can't wait to figure out where we're really going with. Now let's get to the writing, because wow, I mean, the writing in the show is exquisite, honestly. I absolutely love the writing on the show. They did an incredible job with setting everything up, and I really did love the writing here. The writing here is nothing short of Transcendence, and that's mainly because of how great they made the story. I mean, this is a intimate story in every way possible. The way we got into David's head kind of made us think we were just as crazy as him. Like, there are parts in the show that are insane, but they did an incredible job with, making it very nuanced at the same time. Like, obviously, yes, it is a crazy show, and there are a lot of crazy visions that David has, but at the same time, case in point, it needs to be crazy. It can't be this normal show where, it works like other Marvel shows. No, it needs to be a very cerebral type show, and I thought the writing was so interesting there, mainly because, again, we don't know what's actually real. Did David actually have this connection with Sydney? Did he actually go to Amy's house? Is Lenny really dead? All these things we don't know about. We don't really know what's really going on here, and I don't care, honestly. I don't care if that we don't know. I don't need to know in this first episode. I love that the show told us nothing. I love that the show just showed us a bunch of different things because it is the first episode and it's the perfect way to hook us in. It was just such a different kind of premiere, and I love the way this episode did that. I just thought it was such a great way to get us into this world, and I don't think the other episodes are going to be nearly as weird. I will definitely say that. I don't think it's going to be as weird as it is, but that's something else I'm very interested in. He definitely is, our main character, David Haller, is kind of an unreliable narrator. Like, he doesn't really have the biggest gripe on the world. Like, he really doesn't have, the biggest grip on the world. Like, he doesn't know what's real and what's not. So that confuses us, but it's cool the way they do that. It very much reminds me of Mr. Robot, where we will constantly see things and we don't know if they're real or not, and he did a very good job with that. But it's not like Mr. Robot at all, because, Elliot Alderson does not have powers. This guy isn't a computer hacker who has, an antisocial disorder. He has possibly schizophrenia, and I think that definitely is something that's very interesting. We don't even know what time period this takes place in. This very well could take place in the 1960s. This might not take place in modern day. Maybe half of it takes place in modern day, but another half could take place in the 1960s. You really don't know. There are just so many theories and so many things. This, to me, really seems like the next big show that's going to be a lot of theories. Now, I could see this being like Westworld, where, there's so many theories that start coming out, and I really hope that doesn't happen, because I don't like it when people ruin shows because of theories, but I could very well see that happening with Legion. It just seems like that's something that's inevitably going to happen, but we'll have to see. Let's get to the cinematography in this show, because holy shit, this is one of the most gorgeous, like I said, cerebral shows that I have seen in such a long time. The cinematography here is in every way a character of this show. There is no other way to categorize it. It is a character because it's part of David's mind. The sets are incredible. You can tell why it took them so long to make the show. They really did take their time with making these sets as detailed as possible. Just pause on just that one room that has like no doors. It's just so fascinating to look at, and getting us into this world. It's clearly not, normal Earth. Like, there definitely is more going on here than we think, and I definitely really did love the way they did that. But what I also love is the way it doesn't necessarily connect itself to the X-Men series. It's connected, but it is not in canon with that. Like, what happened in the X-Men film series does not necessarily mean that is this version that we're going to get here. This could be one of the versions that, Logan erased. There are just so many possibilities for where they could go with that, and that's something else I'm very interested in. It's not a show that's focused on cameos and focused on trying to get this person or this person. No, it's not that kind of show. It's not trying to do that. It's not trying to, promote the X-Men. It's trying to be its own thing, and I love the way the show fully stayed committed to being its own thing. I thought that was really well done. The show likes to use a lot of, 80s rock music, and I think that also is very interesting, which actually makes a lot of sense, and it actually does work for the show, because Sydney Barrett is actually based on Roger Sid Barrett, who was part of the rock band Pink Floyd, and, Lenny was based on that of David Bowie, so you can definitely tell that music is going to play a big role in this show, and I don't know what exactly that means, but that's something I'm definitely interested in getting into. Jeff Russo, the score here is incredible. There are just so many daring things this first episode did. This is one of the most daring premieres I've seen, because a lot of people might have been turned off because of how different and, mind-bending it really is. It's a show that constantly just questions you with this idea idea of reality and questions you with this idea of insane. Is someone really that insane? Is he really crazy? Or is he just someone who's starting to learn more about his powers? Is he on the brink of something that he fully doesn't understand? What's really going on with Sydney? There are just so many unanswered questions, and I can't wait to see where they're all going to go. That's something that it just really did impress me with the show. Hell, even putting the intro at the end of the episode, that's daring. I mean, I expect an intro to be right when the commercial happened, but no, it didn't happen until the end of the episode, and it honestly makes perfect sense because that is the real start to the show. Him agreeing to to work with Bird, even though he doesn't know if it actually is a good idea and if he actually should be working with her, even if it's actually real, he still wants some sort of grip on reality. He wants some sort of explanation, and I can't wait to see where we're going to go with that. My only real complaint with this episode is not even really a complaint, is that besides David, we don't know a ton about these other characters, but this is only episode 1, and there's still so many places they can go with the story that I'm not really too upset that they did that. I think this premiere was so strong that I really can't find many problems, I have to say. I can really see this being one of FX's biggest hits. I could see this being just an incredible show. It's just so different than anything Marvel's done before, and there are just so many places the show can go, and I really hope they do utilize all of those places and storylines they can go. I can't wait to see really what's going to happen here. But I am definitely going to give the first episode of Legion, Season 1, Episode 1, Chapter 1, a 4.75 out of 5 or an A. Guys, this is the kind of show Marvel needs to be doing. Yes, I know I've praised the Netflix shows. Yes, I've said Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been getting better. But this is truly unlike anything Marvel has done. It was entirely Noah Hawley's vision. It's very different from anything else on TV before. It's not for everyone. I will say that some people might be turned off by how different and really psychedelic and just weird the show really is, but I give it props for doing that. I give it props for crossing the line. I give it props for being something different and trying to confuse people. I thought it did an incredible job with that. I really did love everything about the first episode. I can't wait to see where we're going to go from here. I am completely hooked on the show. I don't know a ton of what's going on, and I don't want to because it completely hooked me in, and I can't wait to see really where we're going to go from here. I can see this definitely being one of my next favorite shows, and there's really no doubt in my mind that tells me the show isn't going to get better and better as it goes on. But over, guys, from my review of Legion, let me know what you guys saw this first episode overall. Loved your thoughts on it. What do you think is really going on? I could be completely wrong with some of my fan theories. I don't actually know if that's actually happening. I haven't said any theories yet because I'm not certain about anything right now. Maybe next week I'll start to get some ideas of what's really going on. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for a movie review, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.